Hello, everyone. I'm Stephen Vartkis, the director of the Ridgefield Historical Society, and today's date is Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. I'd like to welcome all of you to the Ridgefield History Club here at the Scott House at 4 Sunset Lane in Ridgefield, Connecticut. The Ridgefield Historical Society is dedicating to preserving all of Ridgefield's history from the Native Americans who lived here 10,000 years ago up to the present day. And we welcome everyone to get involved and help the Historical Society with this important work. Jack Sanders, who has written over 10 books on Ridgefield's history, is in attendance. And today we're going to be discussing Ridgefield's businesses, past and present. Family-run businesses have been operating here in town for over 3 centuries, and they form the backbone of the community. Many have come and gone with changes in the community's needs, the growth of the town, and technological advances. But today, I'm hoping that we could talk about these businesses and the owners and the employees that you remember from years past, maybe businesses that have been around in town for decades and are still in operation, also favorite stores that your family shopped in, and places that you and your friends worked. So thank you again for joining us today. And would anyone like to start by sharing a memory or a story of any business that was located in Ridgefield? Yes.
Hi, my name is Lynn Casagran Mullins, and my father and mother owned a grocery store on West Lane, which is now the West Lane Deli, called Casimore Grocery. My father began it in the early 40s, and then it closed while he was in the war, and then he reopened it again when he got out of the Army and kept it going till he retired from it in 1986. It was a real family store. He was known for his meat, for his sausage, very limited amount of merchandise, as you can imagine, but I personally never was in a larger store until, I don't know, I was how old, and I thought it was wonderful, the big store, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff. Of course, now I hate it, going to the big store, but at that time, my uncle Arthur did deliveries. We had regular charge customers and then just passers-by. My brother and I started working in the store once we got to be maybe 13 or so, first stocking shelves and then waiting on customers, taking orders over the phone. He had regulars who came from we're right close to the New York state line, who would come for the summer to New York or just lived there all the time and loved his meat and the service that they got. Many years later, and my brother and I can't remember what year it was, they included a liquor store, and my mother ran the liquor store, so once again, still family. Some of my memories of working there were, we had an old adding machine that, big black thing like this with a pull lever to add everything up, if it was a large order. If it was a small order, just somebody stopping by, you'd write on a paper bag, brown paper, and I still dream sometimes about starting to add something up on that brown paper bag and then losing my place and having to start all over again while a line of people are forming on the counter. Some things never leave you. What else can I say? Oh, regular customers were caddies coming from Silver Spring Golf Course. They would get their money for carrying bags and come and spend it on candy, ice cream, soda, whatever. And in the beginning years, across the street, which is Manor Estates now, there was a girls' school. And the girls used to climb over the stone wall fence. In fact, there were even some little steps on the other side, climb over to get a treat of some kind. That's pretty much it. Oh, one other thing. We lived in an apartment over the store. So, we were really there all the time. And there was only the one phone line into the store. And if someone up in the apartment got a call, when you answered the phone, there was a button you pushed, and a buzzer would ring up in our apartment. However, we as teenagers and young people were not allowed to have our friends call during the day because customers were trying to call. And so that's a memory that I have, that everybody had to call after 6 because, all I can say is my parents worked, as all of our parents did, so hard. My father's store was open 6.5 days a week. We rarely got to take a vacation, and if we did, it was only on a Wednesday when he could get a replacement butcher to come in and cut the meat. And that's it.
Wow, thank you so much. That's an amazing story. And could you tell me how long the business was in operation?
Well, my father was there 40 years. I mean, and it's when he sold it in 1986. It's had several owners since then till it became what is now the West Lane Deli. The first owner for about a year was Joe Hahn, who everybody knew, who owned Galloway's restaurant in downtown. But he was only there a year. And then actually the gentleman who owns it now, and I don't know his last name, he used to own the coffee shop on Bailey Avenue in Ridgefield. He bought it and had it for a while. Then a very nice Greek family had it for a while. But they, I guess, just rented it. They didn't own it. And now Harry's son, Harry, who had it in between Joe and John, came back, and he now has been running the West Lane Deli with his family since then. So it's still going since the early 40s, except for during the war. And there were people who had it before us. I just don't know the history of that. I'm sure it's written down somewhere, but I, off the top of my head, don't remember what the history of that was.
That's great. Jack,
What was its name?
Oh, it was Casimore. It was called Casimore. I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot that part. In fact, I have a picture here, and I have a picture of my dad cutting meat. John Moore lived on Olmsted Lane, and he and my dad had been friends their whole lives, and were stood up for each other when they got married. He was part of the original store, bus called Casimore, and my brother and I tried to couldn't remember when he left, but they moved on to Florida, and then my father just kept it going himself. Yeah.
Great, thanks. And do you know what inspired your father to open that business?
I don't. I know as a young man, he used to make bakery deliveries for a bakery in the center of town. I don't know whether it was just an opportunity, just the opportunity. He knew it was being sold, or I honestly don't. Now, we were talking on the way over here today. There were so many questions we wished we'd asked, but never thought of it, never got around to it, and now we just wish we knew. But
Great, thanks so much. Jack, do you know any of the early history of that property before her family acquired it?
I'm just looking up to see if I.
In his memory.
My memory is forget it, but I think it started in the 20s.
okay, yeah,
Does that sound right to you?
that sounds right. Yeah.
But I don't know whether I have the name of the person that started it.
My brother actually thought that he at one time was told there was a gasoline pump out in front of the store at one point in time. I'm not sure that I remember that. I don't know whether that's an accurate memory or not, but
There's a lot of places like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It used to be in front of Bissell's, right? When
Yeah.
Bissell's was on Main Street,
And squash.
in the building that burned, yeah. Joe's store.
Down at
Joe's store, yeah.
Joe's store.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gas pump
Oh,
there.
yeah, definitely Joe's store.
Not for squash,
Yeah.
but
No,
for auto deal.
Yeah. Wow.
Great. Does anyone else have a story to share?
Hi, I'm John Pambianchi,
Oh, welcome.
and my father and my uncle in 1948 started Pamby Motors, which was at 6 Bailey Avenue, which was next to the Ridgefield Press. I believe there's a cabinet maker in there now. My father was a body man, and my uncle was a mechanic, and they sold Atlantic Gas. In 1954, they kept the body shop, and then they moved to 36 Danbury Road. I believe that they bought it from a guy named Devantry, who had, it was called either, I think, Central Garage. And then in 1954, they took on the Studebaker and Packard franchise. So they worked there basically with my aunt as the bookkeeper, my father and my two uncles, and one other fellow that got pumped gas for them. They were selling, when they took it over, they were selling Tidal gas. And then Tidal advanced into Flying A, and Flying A into Getty, and then Getty went bankrupt and it became Chestnut, and then it became an independent, and now we're Sunoco. So we've had, I think it was probably all the same gas, just a different name. As we got bigger and the town grew, we've had more employees, and we built the showroom where Bobo's is now. That was our showroom. At that point, we took on a Jeep and Renault. Built the body shop in the back. Still had the body shop up on Katona Street, so my father would run back and forth. Then we ended up in 1982. We bought what was then Rich Chrysler Plymouth. We bought that building, so we had Jeep and American Motors at the Bobo's location, and then on 143 Danbury we had Chrysler and Plymouth. And in 1986, we built on Route 7 where the old King Neptune property was. American Motors and Chrysler at that time merged, which was a perfect scenario for us so we could have everything under one roof. So we built a new showroom down on 7, and we had American Motors, Chrysler, Plymouth, and Jeep all in one location. So that's pretty much where we are today. But we've been through a lot. From Chrysler going bankrupt to recessions to just a ton of things that hindered the business over the years. But fortunately, I'm there with my two brothers right now, and we have three. I have a son and two nephews that are in the business, and so we fought through a lot to get where we are today, and that's pretty much our story.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
Oh.
it is.
What's the key to your long-term success?
Hard work, a lot of luck, a lot of luck.
Good service.
Good service.
Yeah.
That's
Family.
So I wonder what happened to Packard. I mean, that was like a
Packard went
big
out.
fancy
Yeah.
car, and it just
Well, I'm gonna tell you,
died.
Packard used to come in at the supply company. You know where that ramp was? At the supply,
Ridgefield spot.
where the train would come up, where they just knocked
Yeah.
down the building.
Yeah, okay.
There was
yeah,
a ramp there.
That-
So the Packards would come up on a train. You'd get a call from, I think it was New Jersey, that the cars would be there at 2 o'clock on Friday, and you had to like 6 o'clock Saturday morning to get them off. Now they had 6 cars in the rail car.
Right.
Of course, the 2 biggest cars were on the bottom, but they were the easiest to get in, but the hardest to get off. Because now you had 2 up here, 2 here, and these 2 flat. You had to get them out the front door. So they would go up, and my father, my uncles would go up and probably spend 5-6 hours unloading that.
Really?
Because you had to jack all the cars around to get one out. And if you remember, a Packard was a pretty big car.
Yeah, right. They
You
were
know?
big, fancy.
So that was quite a. That as a kid, that was a great treat for me to watch these new cars come off and
Yeah.
these guys jacking around. But
But when did they kind of die? I mean, that company just went out of business.
58. Well,
58?
Studebaker bought them, and they lasted a year and a half with them. So it was Studebaker Packard, and then when Packard died, Studebaker was right behind them.
Yeah.
Studebaker went out, I think, in 67,
Yeah.
66, 67. And then we have Renault Alliance. I think, Jack, you had a Renault.
We did.
Alliance. Renault.
We won't talk about it too much.
Yeah.
But I'll give you an experience of buying a car at Hamby's. I went in one day. I don't know what car I had, but I was really tired of it, and I went in, and Fred was there, and he said, "Do you want to try this one out?" And it was a Chrysler minivan. He said, "Just take it take it home, show it to Jack. So I just, hopped in the car and drove off with this.
Did you ever bring it back?
We did. We bought it. It was great.
That's great. And now, what inspired your father and uncle to get into the business?
Well, my Uncle Leo had a Pontiac franchise, actually where Party Depot is. But he originally started up on Bailey Avenue. So my father and my uncle bought the Bailey Avenue business from my Uncle Leo. And then he went down to Danbury Road. And
Yeah, when I was growing up, that was Kellogg and Thies.
Right.
Pontiac.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But it was still there on Party Depot, that location around
yeah,
there
it
somewhere.
was right
Kellogg
there.
and
Yeah,
Thies.
yeah, then they sold out. He sold out to a guy from Montpisco. I forget what his name was. Jack Macy. And then General Motors dropped Pontiac, and it's tough to make it on a standalone Cadillac, so he basically went out.
Kellogg's used to have a marvelous Indian head surrounded by fluorescent piping. And when I went out of business, I arranged to buy that piece. I don't know what the hell I was going to do with it. But I didn't have to worry about it after long, because when I came to get it, it had been stolen.
Oh.
I don't know where it is. It would be wonderful to have it.
Yeah.
How about customers? Did you have any memorable customers over the decades? Does anyone stand out? Any interesting stories?
I don't think we're going to be here long enough. No, I mean, we had good people. We've had customers second and third generations, and really never ran into any characters.
That's good. What's the story of your family coming to Ridgefield?
My grandfather came over, Pam Bianchi came over in 1906 by himself. Got off the train in Branchville, walked 100 yards, rented a room in a boarding house at that point, and that's where we all grew up. My grandmother came over like 3 years later, and so we all grew up right across. It was us, the Anconas, right across the street from each other, and actually now there's I think there's a hair cutting place there. It's right on the corner of 102 and 7. Yeah. So we grew up. My father used to say that we had a compound long before the Kennedys. Because my grandmother was there, 2 uncles, us, and an uncle up the hill.
So where in
what
Italy were
motivated him to get off of Branchville? It seems like a.
What's that?
Why did you?
I don't know that. I should have asked, but I never did.
Yeah.
And then he went to work on the railroad, and he was nicknamed Charlie Murray. His real name was Fernando Ambianchi, but he worked with a bunch of Irishmen, and they named him Charlie Murray. So my Uncle Harry and my Uncle Leo were getting married, and they had to go to Reading to get their birth certificate. And they didn't have them registered as Pam Bianchi. They were baptized as Murray. So now they had to go up to Hartford. In those days, this was probably 30s, maybe 40s, to go to Hartford to try to get this mess straightened out. So I guess that wasn't sort of an easy trip. Like 84 wasn't there then,
Right.
So it took a while for them to get that straightened out before they could get married.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Does anyone else have another story to share about a business?
This goes back to 1913, 1914. My grandfather, Gaetano Harry Giardini, and Mr. May had a tavernetta in the house that is across the street. It's a greenhouse, And if you look at the house, it's the third house from the corner. If you look at it, you can see the entrance in the basement. The tavern was in the basement. The May family at that time lived on the first floor, and the Giardini family lived on the second floor. It's hard to know because we never asked questions. I have here from 1915, United States government tobacco tax, which was $2.40, and liquor tax which was $25. However, the state of Connecticut liquor license was $450. So I don't know. All I know is I've got a picture of them, my grandfather in the tavern. But we were told that when Prohibition came, they stopped. Prohibition was 1920 to 1933, and they gave up the business. At some point, my grandfather's family moved to Prospect Street, and that was family property since 1923. I think one of the reasons that my grandfather was able to do some of the things that he could do is he could read and write. We have letters going back. I have one that's dated 1906. I question the date, but at least 1910, 1911, he wrote letters to my grandmother, and we found them hidden in a box in the chest of drawers.
Wow.
So he was reading and writing when he came to this country. So I think that's one of the reasons that he was able to begin the business with Mr. May.
Was your father from Lamarque? Is
Yeah,
that
my grandparents.
10 years?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the Italians in Ridgefield at that time were Marchigiani.
Yeah.
And
Everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Marchigiani means, if you asked them, they would have said Marchigiani, which means man from the Marquis.
Which is where in Italy? Describe.
On the Adriatic coast, the big town would be Senigallia. If you look on the map, San Marino in the north to Ancona in the south.
Ancona's the nearest big town.
You know, we've been to Senigallia. I think I mentioned.
North Central on the Adriatic coast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you go there and you go to Montrado, to Corinaldo, to the little towns, and you go to one of the cemeteries,
They're all Ridgefield names?
they're all they're all the same names that you find at St. Mary's Cemetery. The difference is they're not buried in the ground. They're buried in crypts.
Ah.
You know, one on top of the other, and that's where all the same names.
A lot of them have photographs as well, which is kind of interesting.
No Charlie Murphy.
No, Charlie.
No, Charlie.
No, Charlie.
When I was in Rome a couple of years ago, I was talking to the taxi driver. I told him I was from Lamarque. He said, if a Marchigiani came to your door, it was better to have the devil show up. Because they were tax collectors.
That goes with the reading and writing, though, doesn't it?
Yes, there's a big Marchigiani, or there was a big Marchigiani community in New Haven.
Mhm.
Because I have one letter that my grandfather wrote, and the heading was New Haven. And there was another small Marchigiani family in Poughkeepsie, New York, because when my grandmother came to meet my grandfather, she came with her two brothers. She and my grandfather were either married at Ellis Island or they were taken into New York City. There was a society called the Raphael Society that helped the Italians. So we don't know if they were actually married on Ellis Island or they were taken into the city. And her two brothers went to Poughkeepsie.
I think Gaho's too.
Excuse me?
I think Gaho's too.
Yeah.
Yes.
For instance, you were talking about business, and I can't talk for it, but my grandmother's sister came, and Enzo Bartolucci is a name that people probably know. He was my aunt, or our great aunt's son by her first marriage. His father was killed in the war, I believe. And Zia married Pete Franceschini, and they started Wayside Market.
And then Lou Fossey owned it at one time?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Thank you so much. Are there any other stories, perhaps your family members own businesses in Ridgefield, that anyone would like to share?
I have a question, maybe somebody knows. I have here, it's written in my grandfather's name, and it's called the Italian Cooperative Store, Inc. It's signed by Mr. by Gabinelli, which is a definite Pete Servadio, and it's dated, it looks like 1919, and I'm wondering if it was a function of the Italian American Mutual Aid Society, because
It was a business, but it was kind of a business.
Excuse me?
I think it was kind of a business, but I think there's something about it in Aldo Biagiotti's book.
In Impact?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. It just says the Italian Cooperative Store, Inc. You know, the Mutual Aid Society was set up to help the Italian immigrants in Ridgefield.
Does it give an address? Is it Bailey Avenue?
No, it's got, the interesting thing is, one of them has got my grandfather's Italian name, which was Gaetano, and the other's got Harry Giardini, which was what he was known in this country. One is signed 1919, and the other is signed 1920. And it's one share. It doesn't say how much he paid for it, but it's signed by Pete Servadio, who was the secretary, and Mr. Gabinelli, and I don't know what his first name was, who was the president.
Was it Gasparino, or that had where Bones Carboni had
Yes.
the cozy nook? There was a
Gasparini's store.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and-
he had a nice store there.
And
Yeah.
then Joe Bernetti was down there before he moved
Yes.
up too.
He was.
Joe Bernetti was down. It was a store that is where there's a Lego
Yeah, like the meat
place
trees.
for kids.
Yeah.
The store was right there. And I don't remember when Mr. Gasparini, but I do remember when Joe Bernetti was there. Just a story. My mom told me that she would take me down there, and Joe Bernetti would weigh me on the meat scale. So I assumed that if he was doing it for my mother, he was probably doing it for other Italians.
But you remember Ms. Gasparini's when we were growing up.
Yes.
Before the Meds Andrews bought it.
And then Carboni's had a before
We were
Bones
at
though.
Later. We
Yeah.
were in high
Yeah,
school.
Bones
is
down there.
Johnny, Ronnie, and Jimmy's.
Right.
And, yeah, Jimmy's father.
When we used to sneak out of school, go down there and have lunch,
They had a
and I
pinball
don't know
machine.
who owned it back then.
Pinball machines in the back.
Bones.
Ridgefield had two funeral homes back in its day.
Really?
Gillespie's and King's. We
Really?
have one.
Where was Gillespie's?
Gillespie's was right on Main Street, right before,
Where you exit CVS.
No,
No,
no, on the other side.
because there was the Osborne House, then there was Gillespie's, and saw these stores.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Beatings did funerals, right?
It was a funeral parlor at the turn of the century, though.
Okay, well, Gillespie's, because I lived
Yeah.
on Prospect Street, I remember walking up and seeing all the funeral cars there, and then Ed Dowling bought that house eventually, and lived in that house till it was torn down.
Now, who was the owner of Gillespie's?
Mr.
No.
Gillespie.
He had a daughter. He had a daughter, but.
Is that Sue's?
No.
No.
I don't think
There
so.
was a
No,
Gillespie.
that's
Wait, that's what
At Nash Apartments.
There
was a Gillespie-
remember
There was a
another
Gillespie
story.
that lived on at Nash
Different
My
family.
Apartments.
father said when
Different
he
family.
wanted, when he
Yeah.
died, He wanted to do, I don't know if it was the Irish did, but at that time, today you get in cars and they walked. He said they walked from the Italian American, from the building, they walked up to St. Mary's.
Oh, for the funeral?
There was a procession for the funeral. I don't know. I only know that one story. I don't know if it's authentic or not.
That's nice though.
So I just had a simple question. I've heard Gasparini and Gasparino.
Right.
Were they related or
No, different.
just different families?
I know both of them. Yeah, they're different.
The grocery store was
Gasparino was.
Yeah, Frances Gasparino was in my class.
Remember
in
she
high school.
owned? Yeah, they owned the coffee shop on Bailey Avenue.
Oh.
The Gasparini house is still on East Ridge.
Right.
Gasparini Petronani, the house is still, it's still right on East Ridge.
Wow.
Oh, is that Little Seal?
Little Sealers.
We maybe everybody can chime in with me on this, but we had some favorite stores on Main Street a long time ago. One of our favorites was the Fashion Shop.
My mother worked there.
And Pat's mom worked there, and they carried the Kleins owned it, and they carried everything from underwear to winter coats. You could get anything you wanted in that store.
Ship and Shore.
What's that?
The blouses are all Ship and Shore.
Yes. And that was a great store. That was the only women's really store that we had in Ridgefield.
And where was that located?
You know where Taza's is now? In there, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in
Yeah.
there.
And that's
That was all broken up. And then we had Allen's Men's Clothing, which originally was Patterson's, which is where Rhodier's is now. And then the Allen boys took it over, and they moved. They were there for years, and then they moved across the street where Odessi's is, and then they moved down the street into the old Bongos building where the dance conservatory is now. And that was a favorite store of everybody's as well. And we also had,
Bissell's and Squashes had
yeah,
had fountains.
yes, we had soda fountains.
How about the kitty shop?
Oh, the kitty shop.
Yeah,
Children's clothes. Yeah.
And of course we had Vedians. We had that for a long time. I forget what was there before.
Had the fish store on Main
Hardware
Street.
store. What's that?
I remember that fish store on Main Street where I think the taco place is there now in that building.
Oh
Or
yeah.
no, where Capiola's jeweler
It
was.
was.
Yeah.
Yes. And of course we had the Martin's jewelry store, Francis Martin.
Which became Craig's.
And that became Craig's now. They had a lot of nice shops in Ridgefield.
Wasn't there like 4 jewelry stores at one point in Ridgefield? There was Craig's. There was somebody else, Odessi.
Yeah, but that was
Capiello.
yeah, but that was later on.
Yeah.
Originally, when we were kids, right, John, there was
Well,
just
I don't know. You're always in
Martin's.
there.
There was just Martin's jewelry store, and that was Francis Martin.
If you remember, Patty would remember, from Prospect Street to the end of that first shopping center there, that was all houses.
Yeah.
And I don't know at what point that wasn't houses
You remember
anymore.
that?
But when we walked through there was houses until the,
About the 50s, mid
Just
50s.
2 houses.
excuse me?
Just 2 houses.
Yeah,
That
but
was
it
the ones on
wasn't,
the
it
west
wasn't,
end.
it wasn't
Shops,
commercial
yeah.
Buildings.
This
Well,
is from Prospect Street to where?
To, what's the
To where
store
the
that
hot
does the
dog man
palms?
is.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
the pharmacist.
We also had a general store,
Really?
Brundage's, right?
Yes, my mom worked there too.
His mom worked
Yes.
there.
Now,
That was a great store. I love that.
Where was that?
That's where
Amatuzzi's.
Amatuzzi's are now.
I still remember that.
I'm older than you, John, don't forget. That was a great store. As a kid, you loved to go in there. They had candy. They had everything. That was great.
Paper boys picked up their papers there and delivered their papers from Brundage's.
Well, speaking of papers, I remember Squashes when they used to have that pile of Sunday New York Times.
I worked there with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Putting those things
Huge.
together.
enormous pile of Sunday Times is out on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And then we had a great bakery
We did.
where the pizza shop is now.
For
That, the Hurslers.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was the greatest bakery. I think they were German or Swiss, something like that. And they had the best baked goods you could imagine, made right there.
Did they make donuts?
I think so.
Jelly donuts.
Jelly donuts?
Yeah, I think so. Right there. Yeah.
Nobody
I
makes
remember-
donuts.
Simonelli.
I came in 1966. My family doesn't have a business. But when I moved here, I went to Gold Deli.
Yes.
And Mr. Gold was very outspoken, to say the least. And he also had another deli, I think, in Westport.
Yeah.
And for some reason, he was against Howard Cosell. And he was always on a political
Yes.
issue. I mean, it was an
Cosell must
experience
Yeah, yeah.
to go to Gold Deli. But I wanted to piggyback on what you said about coming to Branchville 1906 and the boarding house. I did research on Camille Sibilia, who was the peanut lady in Branchville, and that's about her time.
Right.
She did the same thing, immigrant, got on the train, lived in that boarding house, worked in the grocery store there, and then married Joe Sibilia, who had an ice cream, soda pop, candy store there. And just speaking of these little candy stores and all, I come from the 8 Lakes area. And we would all go to the beach, and our kids all went to Piatt's. And, it was a little store, but when my daughter comes back, this is something she always remembers.
Yes. We used to go there to the
Yes.
beach, and then they had a little ice cream
Right.
shop. We also had on the corner of Sawmill and what's that road that goes
North
up?
Salem.
Yeah, was Siemens
Siemens,
store, and there were a lot of these little kind of stores.
Was it the store that's by the cemetery? But
No, it's
It's the
what's that
sales sign
road,
on
John?
it. North Salem and
Can't think of what
Sawmill
road it is.
Hill, but on the
And
right hand
Sawmill.
side going down.
Yeah,
It's got
and
the sales sign on it. I think it's got 3 apartments in there.
yes, yes.
Over a million.
Best place to get ice cream. We'd stop there after school. The people that lived at the north end of town, that was one of our favorite places we could get. And also on the corner of Takora Trail and North Salem Road was McKelwey's. They had a gas station and a little store with you could get ice cream, bread, a lot of candy. That was my favorite. And so there were a lot of these little stores around, owned by, families or.
No zoning.
Pardon me? No zoning. No zoning.
Where did you buy lumber? And hardware? Where?
Lumber company.
Right down the hill.
Yeah.
Lumberyard.
Yeah. The lumber
That
yard.
was the only place.
Lumberyard.
Yeah.
See, for hardware, I think of Ridgefield Hardware, but that's fairly recent for you guys, right? That wasn't there when you were.
No, when I was a
That was
kid, it
there.
was there. The Reagan family.
Reagan,
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Ravens.
I mean, to me, that's like the best hardware store.
I
I remember going in with a bolt and saying to Jerry, "Do you have any like this?" And he looked at it. He went in the back and he pulled something out. He said, "I can cut it." It was like 25 cents or 20 cents. You know,
That's right. I forgot about it.
Yeah.
But the lumber,
Mrs. Tome,
They didn't
remember
have it.
Mrs. Tome?
Yeah.
Ridgefield Hardware. Mrs. Tomes and Pete Gabinelli.
yeah.
Mrs.
Yeah,
Gabinelli.
I forgot
went
about
there.
that.
So nice to wait on you, and Mr. Raven was so helpful too.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
As was his son Jared.
Yes. Rose Surfel.
Bernardinelli.
Barnelli. She was there for a long time.
Yeah, she was there for a long time too.
Yeah.
Then she opened her little kitty shop across
Yeah,
the
but she
street.
worked in the hardware store.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
did.
she did.
Yeah.
Maybe it was after the
I think it was
kitty shop.
after because
It was after. You're right, Sally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but the lumber company, they used to get coal in there also.
Yeah.
So the coal train would come up and
On Main Street?
coal shoot out the bottom. They'd have
That must have been fun to
20
see.
feet high, And then the guys would have to come over and shovel it and put it in the truck to deliver.
Yep,
Wow.
that's
Lived there
right.
for 100 years.
Cool. They had everything there.
Does anybody know the name of the family that had that filling station at Decorah and North Salem Road?
McKelwee.
McKelvey.
McKelwee's.
I remember
Yes.
I was
He
fairly
ran the
young.
garbage truck or something? Because he was.
Later on, I think. Yeah.
They had a,
Yes,
they had a
John.
death in the, early death in the family, and apparently it was from jaundice. And for years after that, whenever my family would come up to New York, somebody in the car would always say, "That's where the yellow baby died." I don't know what the hell that meant. Yellow baby. I learned
I
that
don't know. I don't
on.
remember that. It's right on the corner. It was right
Yeah.
on the corner.
I
They
didn't
tore it
realize that
down.
that was the gas station at one
Yes,
time.
it was. Yes, it was.
That's the lower intersection of Decorah.
Yes.
Yes.
I think there were two people in town that were famous or celebrities. I'm not sure. I think Paul Newman at one time had something to do with one of the car dealerships. Which one was
Yeah,
that?
Bob Sharp.
Oh, sure.
Right. And I remember Jane Goodall had offices
Yeah.
in town.
Yeah.
Over where the pizzeria and then on Market
Mhm.
Street and all. So,
That's right. Goes back a long ways.
Where did you do your grocery shopping? Was it in these small neighborhood convenience stores, or was there a store to go in town?
There used to be
Couple.
Gristedes,
They were.
a Gristedes right next to Raven's Hardware.
And there was a First National
right.
where the dance studio is now.
A&P, Grand Union, we
Hey.
had more grocery stores when the town was smaller than we do
And we
now.
had
It's true.
A&P where Brunetti's was, what is it now? The
The
restaurant,
lantern.
the Lantern.
Betsy,
was
you
an
worked in
A&P.
the grocery
That's what you
store,
were
right? You
doing.
told me when the cat lady would come in.
A&P.
A&P, yeah.
And order the groceries and he
Wayside.
professionally delivered them.
Yeah.
Who owned it then?
I think it evolved. For instance, my mother, Wayside was
Yes.
family, and that was when we used to have veal. I mean, and they would deliver it. They would bring it to the
To the house.
They would bring it to the house. Sausage
Yeah.
that they
All around
made
the
there.
phone.
There was no such
That's
thing
how
as
we remember
chickens
Just like
coming
Amazon.
prepared. You could walk in the back of that store and there'd be somebody singeing the feathers, plucking the feathers and then singeing the chicken. I mean, there was no such thing as it was almost made on an order basis. And just so everybody knows, I said this before, sausage was only pork shoulder and pork butt and salt and pepper. There was no fennel, there was no, just the pork shoulder, pork butt, and salt and pepper. And they actually made it in the back. I'm sure your dad and mom did too, and I'm sure Joe Bernetti did. They had this machine where you'd stick the meat down and the casing, and it would fill the casing, and then when it got to be a certain twist.
I remember the previous owner of the old Carville store, and I think that was one of the last ones that was left, and they were using the original machinery that was given out, and the only reason the man told me they were able to continue to exist is somehow he figured out how to keep the machinery working. So I don't know if it's still the old machinery or not, but it was a historical establishment, sort of.
That's up on Route 7
Yeah,
across
right.
from
Felix something,
the
right?
car place.
Felix, but the first guy that had it was a German guy.
Well,
Felix.
was German.
No, before
Before
Felix.
Felix?
Splinkles.
Felix bought it in 78.
Yeah.
My brother worked there in 78, 79. And my daughter worked there for Felix back in 2014, 15.
But it was owned by a German guy first. And what year did Felix buy it, you said?
78.
78, so before that.
Our son worked for him too, and there used to be a story about you couldn't put your hand on this counter and this counter at the same time or you get a shot.
Yeah, but he made an effort to keep the original machine because it was a metal on metal, and it would make the crystals stay smaller. Now they use a plastic screw type of thing, and it wouldn't, it
Not
just
as
wasn't as
creamy.
good. Right.
Yeah.
I just remember going there, and it was like, that's how my parents would get us to agree to leave the beach. It was like, we'll go to Carvel, we'd all go to Great Pond to swim,
Yeah.
and then the kids don't want to leave, and the parents want to leave, so it's like, okay, we'll take you to Carvel, and all of a sudden everybody wants to go.
Carvel, yeah, we all did that.
It's like the way home from the beach.
And get a brown bonnet.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
How long has Carvel been there?
Long time.
It's not there. It's the Ridgefield ice cream store now.
Oh.
I bet you that place was there in the 50s.
It was
Yeah,
in the
it must have
50s.
been.
I remember going.
Yeah, that's what
When
my
they
beach
first
memories
opened
got to
up.
be.
Really?
Carvel
Yeah.
Corner, right?
Yeah.
Used to call it Carvel.
Yeah, right.
A lot of cars went in that ditch.
Yes.
We
I
also,
mean,
Straighten
the
that
police
out.
still
Less
use
in the
that
corner.
as a term. That they'll say there's an accident at the Carvel
Carvel
Corner,
Corner.
Yeah.
and none of them even probably know
Yeah.
what Carvel is.
we also had a nice diner, Ruderman's Diner, down where the BMW
Yeah,
place
right.
is
I
at.
remember there's a diner there.
Down
Yeah.
there. That was a great diner. That was our place to go.
And
We
the
didn't have
candle
any-
shop.
What's
The
that?
candle shop.
Oh,
The
yeah.
candle shop.
That was across the street.
Where the lamp
I
shop
remember
is.
going to Nina's,
Oh,
with my family.
absolutely.
It was so family oriented and so down to earth. That was a great restaurant.
And then we had Joe's store across the street, which is now Tony's,
Joe's
Yeah.
Corner.
Yeah.
and that had gas pumps.
Yep.
Joe's
Yeah.
store had
That's
gas
excellent.
pumps, and that was a favorite place for us to stop. That was a great place.
So Jimmy Joe was there when
Yes, Jimmy Joe was there.
who
Yes.
lived to be how old?
Near
Allegedly.
100. I think he was Lebanese.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys from high school would work there after school. It's a great place. You could get everything there too. Bread, everything, ice cream.
Hostess cupcakes. Tabletop pies.
Table-
Oh, remember good stuff. I think of the things that we ate.
Yeah. They don't taste good now, though.
No, they don't.
I had two students that started businesses, and I was so proud of them. One was Ridgefield Power. I think it was Dale Ventris.
Yeah.
Right.
And he moved on to Montana. He got tired of all the customers and all, but he worked hard to establish that. And then I forget which one of the Soyaks started the glass company.
Oh,
And then,
Jimmy.
he's come back. So I was happy when these, guys from Ridgefield,
Right.
they worked hard to get where they are and start their own businesses. Yeah.
Ventry still owns the property, doesn't he?
Could
There
be.
you go.
Could be.
Maybe so, I don't know.
I'll ask John. Who's now the owner?
So, Darla, I think, brought it up that Betsy had talked about the cat lady. wasn't it?
Well, Darla knows more about the cat
Well-
lady than I do.
Well, I just, done research, talked to different people, and, she didn't have a car. It's a long story, but she would take her red wagon to get cat food. And you were there, you said, when she would come and fill her wagon with cat food and drag that up halfway Barrack Hill. And she was an old lady at that time and not healthy. So, you knew her, and I knew her because I felt sorry, and I would take the red wagon, put it in my car, and help her get to the two homes that she had with all the cats. So what do you remember about her?
Two things. Well, she shopped at the A&P. She bought all canned cat food and every sort of organ meat she could find. And then I guess after her house burned, she moved to the Elms Inn, the guest cottage, and we lived very close by. I guess I was selling Girl Scout cookies and I knocked on that door and I just remember she opened it and there was cats everywhere. From the ceiling to the floor, jumping around. It was crazy. But she did buy some cookies. What? Smelled that? Yeah. But they took her in. That was the scholars took her in.
Just one other old business we should mention is Pinchbeck Nurseries.
Oh,
Yeah.
That was in the Pinchbeck family for many, many years. I don't know how far back they go. But the greenhouses, the people that worked there, I mean, that was the place you would go for flower, for everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know, are the greenhouses still up?
It's still up.
Yeah. They're
There's
still there.
one, I think, or one or two left. They tore most of them down.
They did.
But Barbara, my grandfather Perry Andrew worked there
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
at Pinchbeck.
Yeah.
The other one that no one mentioned is the Elms. My mother started washing dishes there in 1927, and she went from washing dishes in the kitchen to waiting on tables. So I don't know who owned it before the Scholars, but she went to work there at 13. She went to work washing.
Oh, yeah, way before the scholars. I think Jack knows. Rockwell's. Jack knows. Oh,
Yeah.
Rockwell's.
But we shouldn't forget Ancona's,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is there's still a descendant business, at least one, and that started in the 20s. By the way, Casamore, I looked it up here, was actually dates from 1920, and the first owner was named Thomas. Let me just get it here. It was owned by Howard Thomas, then Carl Gustafson, then Paul Davis. Any of those names mean anything to you? No. But you mentioned Joe Hahn buying it. He bought it in '86. Hello, how you doing? The reason that he was in the market is that his previous business had just blown up. Literally,
That's right.
the Galloway's pub
Yeah.
had exploded during a propane delivery
Right.
and was never rebuilt. But I had forgotten that Joe Hahn in 1975 was one of the founding partners of Perp's Cafe right across the street, which was descended from a lot of other restaurants, but that back when Barbara Pulverari had it, and
That's another old business.
yeah.
That's really old.
Propali's.
Yes, it was Propali's
Joe's
Tavern.
Hideaway used to be.
Yeah, but it was Propali's Tavern way back.
It was an old cider place, I believe.
Yes.
But he made porchetta.
Yes.
My brother would deliver papers there, and on certain days he'd come home with his wax paper with his porchetta, and we would just all fight over this delicious. And my brother would say, "No, this is expensive. Careful." Yeah.
But one interesting thing about Casamore is that it has sold food for a century. And there's no other, call it grocery store in Ridgefield, that old.
Wow.
That's pretty amazing.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Learned something new about your store.
Well, I knew somebody else owned it. I just, I didn't know it. Yeah.
And that still is the original building, right?
Yeah, they put an addition on. If you look at that picture, the left-hand side, that part was there originally, and then we didn't. Once again, my brother and I don't know what year they put the addition on the end, which ended up being the liquor store, and made our living room upstairs in the apartment. One thing I have to say about and I'm sure John knows this, I mean, 85% of the customers that come into your business are great, but there's always a few. And there was one woman who, as my father is at the meat block with a cleaver cutting meat, she would come right back out there next to him like this, watching him with the, he had the cleaver in his hand and orchestrating how her meat was cut. It's just interesting, more interesting people than you can shake a stick at when you work retail. Yeah.
But then Miss O'Hearn, Miss O'Shea, didn't she live there?
Oh, Miss O'Shea.
Was
Yeah.
the principal? The principal,
Yeah.
Yes, the principal.
Isabella O'Shea.
Yeah, Isabel, yes. She was.
I'd just like to say too, I don't remember the names, but we were very forward thinking with preschools. And we had one of the first kindergarten teachers at VP with a real curriculum. And on North Salem Road, there was a nursery school halfway down. What was it?
Nan Hawkins?
Nan Hawkins was a leader in the field, and there was another nursery school in town that was amazing, way ahead of its time.
Jocelyn.
I think all our kids went there.
Yeah.
I believe Clara Platt,
Oh, yeah.
who lived on Florida Road, was involved in starting what became the community center kindergarten in what's now the Lounsbury House. But that was like way, back in the 50s. That was the kindergarten.
And Ethelyn Pinchback started
Yes.
Creative Children's Corner, which is still going.
Nan Halpin's husband used to ride his bike from Brookfield down to Ridgefield on the hottest days, and the man never sweated. I don't understand how somebody could be creative who didn't sweat, but he didn't.
Who was that, John?
Pardon me?
Who was that?
That was Nan Halpin's husband.
Her husband.
I asked him about this. He said, I don't allow myself to sweat. Very strange.
Great. Does anyone else have any other stories they'd like to share? We're getting near the end of the program today. It's been really wonderful hearing all these great memories that you have of businesses here in Ridgefield. Anyone else?
Well, I just had a kind of a thing off of, they were talking about the Marcagiani's and that there's a New Haven community. I went to college in Boston, and my roommate was from North Haven.
Yeah.
And his grandmother was from Stony Creek, and would totally serendipitously found out that they had family that was related to Joyce Leegee from Ridgefield, who I knew from the bank. And I just had no idea that there was this.
What was the name?
Infantino.
Not a Ridgefield name.
No, it's not from Joyce's side of the family. No.
I don't know if
can tell you
anyone mentioned the Cortina shop,
Oh,
but I
yes.
remember, going there, getting birthday presents, getting bread, it was a wonderful shop, and the women that worked there were so hospitable. Yeah.
And there was Perner's shoe store right next to it.
And Lucas.
And DeLuca's and Fosse had one way back.
That's
Ruth Fosse had a shoe store.
And as did Norma Fosse.
And Norma. Well, maybe it was Norma's. Norma's. Yeah.
To the left of Books on Common.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, speaking of books on the common, there was the Bell Book and Candle bookstore, which was like next to what later was Woolworths. Remember Woolworths?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Guys
We
had
can't
the little
forget
turtles.
Woolworths.
They had a counter where you could buy, hamburgers and hot dogs, and soda,
and Sundays.
And everyone remembers those little turtles that they sold.
Yeah. And parakeets. Yeah, parakeets.
Yeah, we had birds in there. That was crazy. And bongos, which was similar. You mentioned bongos. That was
Phoebe Stillwell was like the main person in Woolworths. Is that what I remember?
Yeah.
Another
They're behind the counter. the food counter. She worked in food counter.
No, another store I seem to spend a lot of time, the Toy Caboose. It was just, a very interesting store. My kids always wanted to go there.
Freeman's.
Now that was originally like across from the movie house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Near where Bones' was.
Right.
Yeah.
Who was it? Miss Osborne.
Yeah.
Mrs. Osborne. Or Miss Osborne. Yeah.
One piece.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a good stopping point for today. I really, really enjoyed hearing about all these businesses that existed in Ridgefield and that still exist, that have been here for many decades. It's a remarkable achievement to survive that long and thrive. So thank you so much for coming here to the Historical Society today. We're going to continue the History Club gatherings the third Tuesday of every month here at 10 o'clock. So we'll chat for about an hour. So next up is Tuesday, August 15th. So please mark your calendar and we hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Nice.
Very nice.